This is the city of Jerome, arguably Arizona's most prolific mining boomtown of the late 1800s, and it sits on Cleopatra Hill. Following the discovery of rich mine deposits here in 1883, Jerome was founded, setting the stage for a rapid development, drawing over 15,000 people with the promise of work and wealth, and being dubbed the wickedest town in the West. It was filled with a wild aura, including brawls, shootouts, red light districts, and more, all fueled by the money to be had here in the copper mines. In fact, there was so much money produced that it resulted in over $1 billion of copper in today's terms, and made an impact on the global copper markets. Mysteries and ghost towns surround it, with even curious connections to the great Winston Churchill, and the town soared to heights unknown to the Verde Valley until it all came crashing down due to the Great Depression. Post-World War II, the town was a shell of its former self until yet another wave of revival hit it, but this time marked by the cultural transformation of the 60s and 70s, bringing it into the modern era but never forgetting its legacy as a mining powerhouse, remaining core to the town's identity. This is the town on Cleopatra Hill that touched the sky and fell from the clouds. This is the cyclical rise and fall of Jerome, Arizona. So, I am up on the hill behind Jerome, the one that it rests on here, and I'm parked on the side of Highway 89A. What I'm doing is I'm going to hike up the back side of the hill to get an overhead view of the mine there, and also kind of figure out the ghost town I'm going to go check out here in a second anyways. Looking around, no one here, obviously. It's a service road, but it's pretty cool. All right, so we made it to the top. The view, right, we're pretty far away. You can kind of see the mines here, stratified layers, etc. Let's bust out the drone, see how much better it looks. Now, once Angus and Morris figured out that there was tons of copper here, they filed the mining claims for the land in 1876, and the news spread around quickly. When in 1880, Frederick A. Triddle, the governor of the Arizona Territory at the time, and his business partner heard of it, and they offered to buy the claims and were successful. In fact, they spread that news all the way to places like New York, where they received aid from financiers like Eugene Jerome, whom the town is now named after, and created the United Verde Copper Company in 1883. This operation scaled quickly, with smelters being built in Jerome, and the copper was wagoned there to the Atlantic and Pacific Railroad to be distributed. But when only a year later the price of copper dropped by 50%, they ceased operations. Then William A. Clark, a Montana senator and one of the wealthiest men of his era, made an offer to buy United Verde Copper Company, and 4 years later in 1888, his purchase was complete. Alright, so we're going to head back down to Jerome now and check out some of the historical buildings, and they got a museum explaining mining and all the companies that, kind of dominated here. So, good thing, because I don't know shit about it, so let's go see some rocks. On the way back down to Jerome, you can encounter a bunch of abandoned buildings, and Arizona has a ton of them. From ancient ones built into the side of cliffs, to some on top of hills. Others are overlooking ravines, while even more sit next to highways. But these in particular are on the side of mountains and on the edge of slopes, and dating from the 1880s to the 1980s. Some are remnants of fuel, water, or material transports. Others are old prospecting and surveying buildings that seem to go on and on along the slopes of these hills for miles. With the only souls visiting them these days going there to practice their spray painting skills. And the cool thing is, this is really just one road, leading along the downslope to the city on the hill, still in the same place, but much different than it started out as. But it does provoke the questions. Why copper, and why so much of it, and why here in Arizona? Well, Jerome and Cleopatra Hill are on the west rim of the Verde Valley, smack dab in central Arizona. This area is part of the Basin and Range Province, and as we explored, Katie and I learned that the land here experienced crazy volcanic activity during the Tertiary period, around 65 to 2.6 million years ago. The eruptions here released tons of volcanic rock and ash, creating the perfect conditions for copper deposits, and then the heat from these eruptions mobilized that copper from the surrounding rocks, allowing it to migrate and form in concentrated ore deposits. Jerome happens to sit right on the Verde Fault, which even further boosts the migration and concentration of various ore types due to the frequent tectonic activity. So when prospectors Angus McKinnon and M.A. Ruffner were surveying, mapping, sampling, and exploring the geography of this area in 1876, they were surprised when they found abundant copper here on Cleopatra Hill. And it was perfect timing. It coincided with the Industrial Revolution and the rapid expansion of electrical power systems. Mining, and copper with it, became extremely valuable. When William A. Clark took over, he invested heavily in the infrastructure of the United Verde Copper Company, bringing advanced technologies and building the United Verde and Pacific Railway to transport ore. And from 1890 to 1900, the population of Jerome had increased tenfold. Under Clark's influence, the mines flourished, reaching peak production in the early 20th century, and the investment turned Jerome into one of the most productive copper mining towns in America, and one of its most prolific spots was the Little Daisy Mine. Here at Audrey Headframe Park on the way to the Jerome State Historic Park, the Little Daisy Mine is memorialized with a few relics from these mining days, including the largest remaining headframe in the Jerome Mining District. A headframe houses the hoist mechanisms, including cables, pulleys, and winches. It's used to bring up ore buckets or cages from deep within the mine to the surface, or to lower equipment and workers into the mine. This one sits atop what was once the largest single mining shaft in Jerome, reaching depths of nearly 1,900 feet and connecting to a larger network of tunnels, shafts, and ore deposits that were all mapped out over the years of operation here. This headframe did its part in producing some of the richest mines in the world, with nearly 33 tons of copper, gold, silver, lead, and zinc ores, and becoming a significant player in the global market, with more than $1 billion in today's money worth of metals being produced here. Alright, I was heading back into town and figured this would be a good one. Right here is an example of one of the houses that slid down off the hill. I'll move out of the way for you. You can see, here, one second, all the foundations and everything completely torn away. And it's quite the grade getting up here. Now some still stand, but I mean, they're a little more beat up than others. 4 fault lines go through this mountain. And everything that's not built on the very top is not on bedrock. So, good luck sticking around. Jerome State Historic Park is built within Douglas Mansion. Constructed by and the home of James S. Douglas, who acquired the rights to Little Daisy Mine in 1912, when the original prospectors that he was financing defaulted on the loan that he offered them. He built the building to serve not only as his family home, but also as a social hub and an example of architectural sophistication in a mining town. He built up the community of Jerome, supporting schools and being involved in the establishment of infrastructure and utilities that supported the town's growth and sustainability. His family definitely had a lasting impact on the area. When he took over the mine, he immediately began developing it by introducing modern mining and processing techniques, focusing more on the efficiency of the ore processing methods to increase yield and reduce waste. And it turned out that it was one of the most productive copper mines in the region at the time, and eventually set new standards for the entire industry. He even built a hospital to treat sickness and injuries from the mine for the workers in 1927, dubbing it the United Verde Hospital. But eventually, all good things come to an end, and when the Great Depression hit the United States in 1929 and the stock market crashed and banks began to fail, the purchasing of all goods in the world's economies came to almost a near halt. This affected both the demand and the processing costs for copper, until the beginning of World War II, where copper demand soared again and renewed the ore's market demands for the duration of the war, and for a few years after. Eventually, though, the mines began to close, with the United Verde Hospital closing in 1950 and the last of the major mining operations closing in 1953. Jerome slowly but surely slid into a shell of its former glory, until community members and artists looking for cheap property in the Verde Valley saw major potential in the city in the 60s and 70s, drawn by its historic charm and the dramatically reduced prices. Jerome was slowly built up with a unique combination of art galleries, local boutiques, wineries, and its rich history displayed in several museums and tours available in the town. The most notable being the renovation of the old United Verde Hospital, renaming it to be the now Jerome Grand Hotel in 1996, and making it one of the town's most popular accommodations, known for its historical architecture and for tales of being haunted. This and the town's dramatic views of the Verde Valley add to its modern allure, with various cultural and artistic events held there now being responsible for drawing tourists to the town each year. This is Jerome, the city on the hill that catches the eyes of all who cross its path. But what you don't see on the surface is the decades of effort and toil that went into making this town what it is today. A beautiful, historical, and totally unique part of Arizona, and one that I'm sure will continue to make history as long as it lives on.